Welcome to Event Icons, where you get to chat with the icons of the event industry. Hi, I am Alex Flaxen, one of your co-hosts today, and we are here with Brant Kruger, our other co-host.
Hello.
Today, we are going to be talking about women in events, which is very, very exciting.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of #EventIcons,
presented by Endless Events.
the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Use the question panel on the webinar to submit your questions, or you can hop on Twitter. Submit your questions with #EventIcons.
We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show.
Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share #EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook.
Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com.
Now, without any further delay, this is #EventIcons.
Women are everywhere in events, crossing all sectors of the industry, from entry level to the most senior roles, where they're making an impact, and yet they still face challenges at every level. So today we have three incredible women in the industry who are leading the way. They're going to be joining us. They're smart, connected, strong. They've been providing guidance to many. So we're here to listen, learn, take away actionable ideas for you personally and for your organization. This is a topic that's good for men and women because we're all in this together. So I'm really excited. We've got a new guest to the show. Technically, she was on the show for our IMEX America, but we've got Kiki Fox here. For the first time. She's passionate about the industry and being involved. She's a member of IAEE, MPI, PCMA, serves on several boards with them. And by attending networking and educational events, she stayed up to date on issues facing the industry. She's a co-founder and the past president of the Association for Women in Events, which we're going to be talking about a lot today. It's an inclusive organization dedicated to professional advancement of women in all facets of the events industry. We've also got two folks who have been with us before to talk about the Me Too movement. Courtney Stanley, she's a speaker, writer, business consultant who empowers professionals to challenge the norms of the meetings industry. And Sarah Soliman, who's a content connoisseur, serving organizations and small businesses with informative video content marketing. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Alex. We're excited to be here.
So the first question that we always ask anyone new to the show, so this is specifically for Kiki, because we've heard from Courtney and Sarah, is what got you into the events industry? We ask everyone these two questions. What got you into the events industry? And if you weren't in the events industry, what would you be doing?
So I kind of fell into the events industry. When I graduated from college, it was the recession, so I didn't have a job. And I came back to DC and was just looking for experience. And my major was food marketing because I really love food, all aspects of it. And so there was an organization that had reached out to my college at one point to hire a summer intern. And I had interviewed for the position, but they ended up going with somebody more senior. So basically my mother was like, hey, you got to explore every opportunity. Just reach out to them and see if there's any way you can, maybe do an unpaid internship, work for free, get some experience. And it happened to be the National Confectioners Association, which is a candy association. So it's amazing. And I went in to talk to them. The person who was my boss was actually an alum of my major at St. Joe's up in Philly. And so I was able to get an internship there and I absolutely fell in love with it. I really never knew when I graduated exactly what I wanted to do. I had interviewed for jobs and I thought this would be okay. This would be okay. It'll get me there. I'm sure I'll have fun doing it. But as soon as I walked into the National Confectioners Association's offices, first of all, it's covered in candy and really fun pictures and things like that. But they let me work on so many different projects, including the trade show, that I absolutely fell in love and decided that, this is what I've been missing. This is what I'm looking for. So I ended up getting a full-time job with them and then never left.
Kiki, can I just ask what
that conference or trade show was like? A candy conference?
It's called the Sweets and Snacks Expo, and it's even better than you would think. It is just 550 booths or so of candy and snacks and deliciousness.
And you still had your start in food, Kiki. You said that
so,
I mean, it's a win.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I got all the free candy I could eat. So my friends were really happy about it.
Voila.
Exactly.
If you weren't in the events industry, what would you be doing?
If I wasn't in the events industry, I might try my hand I studied photography as well in college, so I might try my hand at that. But most likely what I would be doing is becoming a cat hoarder. Because I am a crazy cat lady.
I think that's our first cat hoarder response.
Hopefully. It's probably a good thing that I've remained in the events industry for all animals and for myself and my husband.
Give you the cat cup. I love it.
Well, Kiki, aside from the sweet internship that you got right out of school, wondering if maybe you could, I'm sorry, I couldn't resist the pun.
Yeah, that was good. That was good. I liked that.
I've been working on my transitions. Tell us about AWE, and how it all began and where it is now. Sure. So
AWE was founded in 2015. There was actually 5 of us that got together and started the organization. It's Carrie Abernathy, Mas Tedesque, Tamala Blaylock, Mary Hyam, and myself. And Carrie Abernathy, I'm sure many people know, is a wonderful connector and absolutely a doer as well. So I, with a group of young women professionals, I had started a group where we would get together, have brunch, and talk about the challenges that we faced in the industry, what our goals were, what we were looking to achieve, strengths, weaknesses, things like that. I would also bring in women that we admired so that we could sit down with them, ply them with unlimited mimosas, and pick their brains about pretty much everything. So it had been really awesome. We'd been doing it for about a year and a half. And Carrie and I had talked about it, and she knew 2 women, Tamala and Mas, that were also doing something similar, but for women that were a little further along in their career. They called it a lean-in circle. So they would meet once a quarter, and their rule was, come, enjoy, spend some time with other people. If you bring a challenge to the table, you have to walk away with a potential solution. So it's not just to go and complain. So she thought it would be a great idea for all of us to meet and to connect. And it was. We had a really wonderful phone call talking about how our different groups could help each other. And Carrie sort of pitched the idea of an event, an organization for women in the events community. We thought it was a really good idea. We thought it was really interesting. But for our understanding, 4 of us, when we hung up the phone call, we were going to sort of see how our groups could work together and maybe talk about that down the line. And about a week later, we had a website, a name. We were starting to plan, and it literally happened overnight. It was kind of a poof. But as soon as we announced it, everyone was so supportive. And we just heard a lot of, there's been the need for this in the industry for so long, and it's something that is so important. And we're so glad that somebody finally came forward to address, to set something up so that we have this wonderful space, and so that we can help women in the industry achieve whatever goals it is that they want to get to.
Now, I actually have a follow-up question about that, because I remember when AWE was founded, and I heard a lot of people say, like, why is this necessary? Because I think it's worth noting that, especially in the events industry, there is a large percentage of event professionals who are women, overwhelmingly. And the question was, isn't every association for event professionals the Association for Women in Events? So can you kind of speak to what makes AWE different and why it was so necessary?
Yeah, well, obviously women make up a majority of the events industry workforce, but we actually make up a really small amount of the C-level positions. So women are not getting to these higher levels, and it could be for many reasons. But the other thing is, I found that just throughout my time with the brunch group and everything like that, I would talk to people who just didn't really have a community around them. So maybe their organizations wouldn't pay for them to join like an MPI or a PCMA or an IEEE. And they had questions that they couldn't necessarily get answered. oh, I was looking to move jobs, but I didn't really know how to go about that. I didn't know how to promote myself, or I was wondering if this is something that's normal, or women coming back after maternity leave or something like that. It can be, if you don't have a community around you, all of that can be really, really isolating. So we started AWE. Obviously we would love for people's organizations to pay for their membership, but we wanted to set it up so that it's something that you can do for yourself as well. And to connect women, so that when women are able to support other women, and when you have resources of incredible people that you can go to and say, hey, listen, I know that you have had personal experience with this. What do I do? How did you tackle this challenge? Or, hey, I'm taking on social media for my organization. What are some good resources I can look to? You can put it on Facebook. Everybody always looks for ideas on Facebook and things like that, but those people may not be in your circle. They don't necessarily understand the events industry. So I think that, while there are, every organization obviously has women and is run by women, and a lot of the programming now is starting to be put out for women. There wasn't a year-round way for these people to connect and take that motivation that you would feel from an empowering conference or a motivational speaker or something like that, and turn it into something that you can have to power yourself and your career for the entire year.
And I'd like to jump in here. I love what you said, Kiki. And recently there was an AWE, actually a webinar where this question was asked. And I love the response of, AWE is built on the foundation of women in general, whether it's challenges, finding solutions, really providing a safe haven for women to feel like they have a year-round community. And that is the foundation of AWE. It's women-focused, it's women-centric. So I think that is really the huge differentiator, because all of the initiatives are around women. So it's not like there's just one track of programming or interspersed education here and there. It really is the foundation of what AWE is. So I love that answer. And it's so true, because I too at one point was like, well, what is going to what makes this different? But that really is what makes it different. It's at its core, it's women centric, and it's really the only organization in the industry that has that. So.
And I'm going to take it a step further. I think I'm going to be a little extra bold in saying this. I mean, when you think about any new organization, any new company, any new idea, any new technology, the reason why it comes to fruition and why it's successful in the way that AWE has been is because there was a need, and there were needs that weren't being met. And I think that's the bottom line. I think that there were a lot of people, specifically women in our community, who would look at content, and they would look at networking opportunities or even business opportunities, and they would say, I want more. And so I think what AWE did is they found a place in the market that there was actually that need, and there was a community that was looking for something different. And I think what we're seeing now, which is really incredible, is a lot of the other industry associations they're looking at what AWE is doing, and they're learning from them, and you're starting to see that there is a greater focus around women in other associations, which is great. That's awesome.
That's actually a really great transition to the next question that we had, which is, can you each share a moment when you knew you had to step up and be a leader in this movement?
I can start. I can start. This is a pretty easy question for me, and maybe for Sarah too, and that is talking about the meetings to movement. So for me, there was a serious need that wasn't being talked about, and it certainly wasn't being addressed. And that was that there is a sexual harassment and sexual assault issue in the meetings and hospitality industry. And there was an opportunity for somebody to stand up and say something about what was happening. And for me, there was a real moment, and that moment happened actually right before and after the Me Too movement was reignited. I wrote an article the summer leading up to the Me Too movement, or when it was reignited, and I just simply portrayed the stories and testimonies of other women in the meetings industry who had stories to share about sexual harassment and assault as a meeting professional on the job, in the workplace, or on site at an event. So I shared those stories, and then it was pretty crazy. Quickly after that happened, the Me Too movement completely separately was reignited. And my moment wasn't writing the article. I felt nervous about writing the article. I was excited to hopefully start a different kind of conversation in the industry. But my moment wasn't until after the Me Too movement was ignited, when I experienced yet another incident of sexual harassment at one of our industry's events. And that was my moment. I think becoming so frustrated by this type of behavior happening over and over and over again to people in our own family and in our own community really drove me and fueled me to keep talking about it and keep writing about it and start finding solutions and training people. And I know for Sarah, it's been much of the same. I think we were able to find each other through a common experiences and found, similar passions to take a stand and make a difference.
Absolutely. And this is the sexual harassment part is definitely a moment for me as well. And in addition, I feel like I've always been an advocate for women my entire life, really. But more so over the past few years, I feel like ever since I started my business in particular, I have had these amazing moments and conversations with women of all ages, which is the best part. Women that are older than me and more experienced, women that are just getting their start in their careers and just looking to me for inspiration or advice, or, just to sit on the phone with them and talk through ideas and strategies and what they can do to really, step up and elevate their presence in business. And that, to me, like, all of those moments added up have been really what have driven my passion and really fueled my fire to keep that movement going. And in addition, and I think I can probably, I know I can speak for Courtney because we've talked about this, and probably for Kiki, unfortunately, there's a lot of that mean girl mentality where women bully other women. And I've always been victim of that, unfortunately, in business and in my personal life. So at some point, you just kind of find your own confidence and you find a way to step up and invite other women with open arms into your world. So they know that, that isn't the norm. That mean girl mentality is not the norm. So I've had, I guess, several moments. There isn't one in particular that I could really share, but for me, it's been more so of a journey of moments that have happened over the course of my life, but then in particular over the past, I would say, almost 4 years now, that keep me going, and just seeing all of these really badass women doing amazing things in politics and business in our industry. How can you not keep up with that and want to stay ahead of that movement?
Kiki, was there anything else in your story that brought this all to a head?
I was just going to say, I mean, again, so obviously Carrie Abernathy being a wonderful motivator, but I would say the same as Sarah. It's never been a situation, like one main situation that I knew I had to step up. I've always been very lucky in that I sometimes have an overabundance of confidence. So not much scares me at this point. I'm always willing to go up and find, if I admire someone, and, hey, give me 5 minutes, 10 minutes of your time. I'll take you to coffee. Let me pick your brain. So things like that, I've always been very lucky, and people have been wonderful to share with me. And then I started to realize, again, as we were sort of prepping with AWE, and some of my experiences were that people didn't have that same ability to just ask for what they want and not necessarily worry about it too much. And so that was sort of where I felt, hey, I've got the ability to do this. I'm a little headstrong in a lot of ways. I don't have much fear in that way, but I've also got the privilege that I am able to do this and people will listen to me. So I felt like, you know, this is the perfect opportunity for me to step up and put something together where, again, it hasn't been in the past, and where a lot of people can benefit from it.
I want to go back to a couple of things. You guys touched on a couple different things there. You touched on the fact that there was a need there that wasn't being met. You touched on the power of that community, you know, and the value that you guys are getting out of being able to share those stories and share those experiences. And then Kiki, you mentioned, you know, wanting to make, you know, more, you know, an accessible association, right? Something that people could get into. So, you know, I was doing some flipping around and, you know, it definitely looks like the memberships and things are significantly lower than a lot of the other industry associations that are out there, including like students being free. And I want to say the introductory was like $40.
Yeah, we have two memberships, one at $195 and one at $40.
Can you expand on that and just how, you know, was that part of the design, you know, to again, make that more accessible?
Yes. So we actually, the membership part that you see now is something that we launched actually at IMEX this past year. Previously there was student memberships for, I think, around $40. And then we had just the general access at $195. And the reason we came up with that, we did some focus groups and everything, but that was an amount that gave value to the organization and represented all of the different member benefits that you get, because we do have a lot, but was still something that would be relatively accessible, again, to people if they had to pay for it themselves. And so the reason we came out with this brand new membership structure was because, you know, even though $195 is not the highest level that you could pay, we still want people to get access to AWE, even if it's not, you know, if they can afford $40, fantastic. That means that they have access to a good deal of our member benefits, and they're going to get to know AWE and they're going to benefit from it. Hopefully, as they grow in their career, they'll be able to upgrade their membership to that higher level, which comes with some more great perks. But also students, we had a lot of students email us and just say, you know, hey, I'm super interested. I would love to leave my college or my university with a better understanding, and I would love to use these resources. You know, even at this point, $40 might be too much. So, you know, I am amazed because when I was a senior in college, I was not thinking about any of this. So if we've got people that really want to start off their careers with a bang and get motivation from other women or get advice or anything like that, then there should be nothing holding them back from that. That's an incredibly responsible thing to start with, and it shows a huge amount of passion that's going to serve them really well. So our responsibility to the younger generations that are coming in is to start them off with the best opportunities possible and the best resources.
And do you feel like you're starting to kind of scoop up folks that might not have necessarily gone the association route?
Absolutely. Our memberships are definitely up, especially with that $40 membership, because now organizations too are seeing this as an opportunity to say, okay, well, we've got, you know, I'm a boss. I have 8 people working below me, men and women. Well, $40 for each person, that's completely accessible. I can say, yeah, I want all of those 8 people to join, instead of making each one come to me and say, here's the reason I should join. This is why it's important to me. Let me see the, you know, ROI on us paying for your membership. So we're able to get a larger group. And it's also, I think, enticing organizations to say, oh, this is something that's really important for me to provide to my employees.
And I think to your question also, Brandon, and Kiki, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what's really neat about AWE is that it does extend the membership outside of the events industry as well, because it is, again, women centric from an education standpoint. So whether, you know, a woman is a business owner, but just maybe not entrenched in the meetings industry, there is content that she can benefit from. And then that in turn also her employees can benefit from by being a member of AWE. So that's, I think, another really unique thing about the association is that the content, you know, even through like the monthly webinars and stuff, it's not just solely focused on industry people, which I think is a really neat touch.
Yeah, there's, you know, the content that we put out, while we're an organization that is for women in events, we are not putting out things that are only applying to women either. The organization is open for men and women to join, and we have fantastic men on our board and as members. And we try to make sure that, number one, we don't want to pander to our audience. We don't want to say everything is pink, everything, oh, well, if you're a woman, you probably have trouble with this, because that's not true. However, there are things that, women don't always have as easy access to. So putting on people that will talk to you about, building a kitchen cabinet was one of them, I think a year or so ago, which was, once you get yourself to a leadership position, how to fill the other spots in your organization with people that are going to help you and help your organization succeed. That's a huge thing for everyone to know, but women may not have that same, they may not have been conditioned over the years to have that. We also had an amazing speaker come on to talk about dealing with being a person at work, having a full-time job, and also dealing with an ailing parent who's potentially living at home and you're a caregiver. People talk a lot about, working with kids, and that is something that absolutely happens and lots of people can talk about, but there's not as much address to people that are dealing with, having loved ones live with them that rely on them that are not, under 18 type situation. So things like that, again, it's information. It's not just about, how to write a resume or how to interview for a job. It's skills that can benefit everybody in your life that help make what you put forward in your passion and in your work succeed and really shine.
So I'm gonna take this in a little bit of a different direction. I want to hear you get really raw and real with this. I want to hear your real opinions about this, because this is a hot topic. And I know you mentioned that, there's men on the board of AWE and there's a lot of men who are supporting this mission. So I want to hear from you, boys versus girls. How are the men in our industry stepping up and supporting you? And how are the women? And, are in the words of Tahira, are we our own worst enemies? Tahira wrote this question, but it's, I think it's extremely relevant. And I think, as we see, different people stepping up to the plate, I think it's worth, I want to hear from you three, because you're in the trenches. You really see what's going on. So I want to hear from you.
I think there's definitely a lot of division, back to what I was saying earlier about the mean girl mentality, where unfortunately, and this happens very much in our industry, and we are all three victims of that, where women tend to bully other women. Sometimes it's an ageism thing, where it's older women in the industry that, unfortunately, rather than take the youngins, millennials, whatever, under their wing, they do the opposite. And it's really disheartening. And then on a bigger picture, something that really frustrated me was when the Women's March happened, there was so much division with women, and women that didn't agree with the march, and women that, were just putting so much negative fuel and energy on social media about the march. And it just baffled me, because I don't understand how, when a group of people is trying to march or really stand for something that is for the betterment of a gender or a religion or anything, a culture, whatever it may be, another group of people, that their own, we're like damaging ourselves by not supporting that and putting negative commentary out there. So it just made me think, like, when Rosa Parks decided, to stand her ground, she was doing that for a bigger purpose. And if she didn't do that, or if Martin Luther King Jr. didn't, march and really stand for the things that he did for the African-American community, and there was that kind of negativity towards that, like, where would we be today? And so things like that I still see, unfortunately, with women. I was having a conversation with one of my girlfriends about, some of the new women that are in the House of Representatives currently. And, just about their outfits and stuff. And it just bothers me because it's like, why are we having these conversations? Why are we so concerned about what women are wearing and not really in tune with what women are saying and what they actually have to bring to the table? And I think that happens very much so in our industry as well. I think it's across the board, and it's really a global issue. But that I think we have a lot of work to do, and there's still a long way to go for women to be kind to one another and really be supportive in all of our efforts moving forward. And that goes for, Courtney and I have gotten some backlash about sexual harassment and stuff too, things that we've stood up for that, again, is a human problem. It's not just a women problem, it's a human problem. So why are we fighting one another over this nonsense rather than coming together as a community and really helping create these positive movements for all people, right? So that's my real talk.
I'm going to jump in here because there is a specific example that I can give you that I am more than happy to share, because I think that it was a big aha moment. So Sarah and I were presenting on stage at a conference last year, and we were presenting essentially we were helping to educate people in the room on how to empower and advance women. So we had a great experience presenting. It seemed to really resonate with the audience. There were a lot of really great questions that were asked. And one of the main topics that we covered was this mean girl mentality and this girl on girl bullying that happens in the professional world, not just in our industry, but across various industries. And so we gave this heartfelt presentation, and in our feedback survey, it really did resonate with the group, which we were so happy to see. But there was one comment, and for fellow speakers out there,
there's always one.
Always one. That's the rule of thumb. So you expect it. You look at feedback and you take it for what it is. You take it with a grain of salt, and you expect that there's always going to be somebody that is going to be hypercritical about something. But what really caused our jaws to drop and our eyes to roll was that this person said that Sarah and I were dressed inappropriately and unprofessionally. And we were like, how did this person, were they there? Were they in the room? Did this content just go completely over their heads?
The worst part is that they said, they didn't just say we were dressed inappropriately. They said that our skirts and our dresses were too tight.
Too tight. That's right.
So
yeah. That's right. So we, of course, Sarah and I pull up the pictures of us on stage, and we're like, first of all, no. But secondly, really, that's the takeaway? Like, you missed all of this great content around empowering other women and being an advocate and being supportive. And it was just crazy. So to the question that was asked, are we our own worst enemies as women? Sometimes, but that was one person out of a huge group of people. I also think, to answer one of your other questions, the boys versus girls thing, who's stepping up and who's not, to me, I really do think that it's circumstantial. I have incredible mentors and peers and friends and colleagues that are both men and women, and most of them are incredible. But there are other people that I've worked with or served in a volunteer capacity with that are not so great. And they are the people that try to tear others down. And I don't think that it's just women on either side of that fence.
Yeah, I agree with Courtney. I mean, of course there are mean girls out there. And I know several people who have had issues with, bosses that are afraid that they're going to take their jobs and things like that. But it's the same as you can experience that with men as well. So I do think that the younger generation is starting to experience less and less of that, because I think that sometimes people that have worked really hard to overcome a lot of obstacles before us can be a little bummed that it's so easy, or maybe a little jealous that it's so easy for us to put these ideas out and have them accepted so readily, which I can understand. It's I feel like that may happen to me too. And it just depends on if you feel the need to express it or But what I will say is, again, since forming AWE, yeah, we had backlash from a couple people that spoke up and said things, and people who didn't necessarily understand why we were doing what we were doing or why it needed to be done. But I have literally just in spades gotten to meet these incredible women who all they want to do is help other women as well. I have so many people at this point that I could reach out to with any sort of question or any sort of challenge, and they will happily drop whatever they're doing to assist me or to assist, the next person who comes behind me. So I think that has been, for me, the greatest thing, is just seeing that, even though there are some people that are not as positive and don't feel the need to support other women or other men for that matter, they're sort of all in it for themselves. That there are so many other people that are dedicated to making this community, this industry, and this world a more inclusive and a more supportive space. For men, I mean, again, we were completely blown away. We had a lot of conversations at the beginning on if men would be invited to join the organization. And absolutely they should. And the reason is that we're not going to get anywhere by putting ourselves into a windowless room and coming up with all these ideas. By saying, oh, it's women only, we're the only ones that can be a part of this. That means that we can only go so far, because men are the ones in the position of power. And if we don't have their help to start filling their jobs as they leave with women, or if we don't have somebody who's in a position of a man in a position of power saying, hey, to my 5 women employees, I want to make sure that you specifically get, the ability to attend education that, you can use to, again, empower your career and things like that. So we were blown away by the men who applied for our inaugural board. We have had incredible people that really speak out for AWE, and again, get other people involved. We've had a lot of sponsors who are either through, small businesses owned by men, or men who are, leading teams say, I know this is really important, so we want to be a part of this movement, and we want to help you continue your goals, because this is important not only for the people in our organization, but for the industry as a whole. And so that has been absolutely incredible. Of course, there are people who joke about it and make fun of it, or, oh, I can't be a part of the Association for Women in Events. But again, it's been such a positive reflection of the fact that our industry is seeing change, and our industry is open to this kind of change, that we've had a lot more positivity than we have had any negativity.
There's definitely a behavioral shift, to Kiki's point. I mean, I think a lot of the men in leadership roles that I am privileged to call my friends have always said, we never look at resumes and think woman, man, which, we're going to interview the man or give him more money or whatever. They just look at who's best for the job. Man, woman, it doesn't matter. So I think we're definitely seeing a behavioral shift in that regard. And I think it's because of the work that associations like AWE are doing to really open the doors to the entire community and provide that education. So everyone is well informed, and also that men have a better window into what some of the challenges that women deal with are, because you don't know what you don't know. If you don't grow up as a woman, you don't know. So AWE serves as that platform for men to really get that education. But I think also in general, there are more good people than there are evil, right? There are more good women leading the charge and supporting one another than there are those mean girls, right? There was one in our audience out of 100. So I think at the end of the day, with the behavioral shift and just knowing and having hope in humanity in general, that there are more good people than there are people trying to hold others back, that's the positive thread to stick to. And that's really where our focus should be in these conversations.
And I'll just add one more thing. I don't think that anybody can argue that we're living in a very polarized society right now. where it's Republican versus Democrat. It's, sometimes man versus woman, et cetera, et cetera. And I think that something that is sorely missed right now is the ability to have a conversation across whatever aisle that may be. So for women, if you are finding that you aren't supported, or somebody doesn't agree with you, it's worth having a conversation with that person or those groups of people, because they may not have had the same life experiences as you. They may not see things the way that you see things. So I think it's hyper critical that we remember that we have to engage in a conversation that's not, it's not divisive, it's not polarized, it's coming together to understand each other better.
Do you think there's been enough of a shift, Sarah, that we can get to the point where we're not going to need an AWE at some point? If so, what does that future look like? How does that shift? How does AWE start to shift as we move toward that, utopian world where everybody's listening to everyone? I mean, how fast does that kind of shift happen?
I don't think that there's ever going to be a time where there isn't a need for an association like AWE, because although we are seeing a shift in the way people are thinking and behaviors and a more inclusive environment, to Courtney's point, there's still difficult conversations to be had. And there are generations upon generations of things that, have happened in our history that we need to still tackle. And then there are always going to be issues, unique challenges for every woman. So whether it's maternity leave, whether it's, going through a divorce and having to now be a single mom and run a business, or, there are so many unique challenges that women face that I think organizations like AWE will always have a place I need a place like an AWE to call home. I need to know that I have that community of support to pick up the phone and talk to Kiki or Courtney or Carrie or whoever it may be, that's going to give me sound advice and that really has my back. So although we're seeing the shift, which is great, that's what we're all working hard for, at the end of the day, every one person has their own set of challenges. And I think that's what associations do. They really tend to those challenges. And with AWE, what's great about it is it feels like a very intimate organization. So it's accessible. The founders are accessible. The board of directors are accessible. So yeah, I just don't see it being something that we won't need in the near future, or even in long term, down the road as well.
There's that word again.
Yeah. Well, I mean, in my opinion, I would love nothing more than for AWE to become not needed, because that would mean that we are living in a completely equal world. But the fact of the matter is, I don't see that happening in my lifetime. And the other thing is, it's not just about the separation between men and women and getting more women into the higher level positions and things like that. AWE also focuses a lot on the fact that, while women are seen as one large group, we're actually very different. So white women have much more advantage in the workplace than women of color. And we have much more privilege and ability. And, there's a really wonderful infographic that shows basically the breakdown of the payment by men and women and by race. And the fact of the matter is that even if we get, in theory, women to, be equal to men in all things, there's still going to be that aspect of diversity. It's not a blanket statement. It cannot apply to everyone. You have, if you're taking into account this, you also have to take into account, again, when most people say women, they're talking about white women like me. So the fact of the matter is, it has to make AWE completely redundant, it has to cover a whole lot of stuff. So not only are we trying to get people to, give more power and leadership opportunities to women in the workplace and for women to feel that they can achieve their goals, we want to give that also to women, especially women of color, who definitely have even less access to that oftentimes than a white woman would. We want to put them in the positions to, be considered as candidates for this job as well. And we want people to realize the unconscious bias that goes into hiring as well, which is why, again, a lot of men have these positions. You hire people that are like you without even realizing it. So, if I was hiring someone to work for me, I would unconsciously probably find somebody with blue hair and who was female. And I would probably be more attracted to somebody if they came in with really fun colored hair, just because, again, it reflects myself. But once I am aware of that, then I can take a look at that and say, okay, am I hiring this person because they're the one that reminds me most of myself? Or is it because they really are the best candidate? If there are two candidates that are very similar, am I giving the opportunity to a person who may have that better opportunity down the line? Or what about this person who may not have a chance to get into this, level because somebody else doesn't realize what I'm realizing at this moment? And the more that you put that out there, the more people realize it, the more they can fight against it, which will, again, hopefully, maybe at some point in someone's lifetime, make an organization like this not as necessary. But until then, yeah, it's definitely a lot of hard work that we gotta get to.
But I also think that it's not just, organizations like AWE, like I look to AWE, for example, as personal development as well. So taking the business side out of it, taking the, skill set and opportunities and all of that. I mean, to be completely candid, I wasn't always a confident woman. I actually, growing up, I was shy. And I mean, you can ask my mom, she's like, where did this monster come from? I'm like a totally different human in my adult life. But, and my confidence stemmed from working on my personal development through organizations. AWE wasn't around at the time, but the reason why I make that statement is to kind of showcase the fact that, women, there are many layers to humans in general, men and women. But women in particular, as you suffer through confidence or, you body shaming or whatever it may be, you need that, again, support, community, people that are like you, to remind you and pick you up when you aren't feeling at your best. So outside of creating these, tracks of education where it's like focused on salaries and, gender pay and whatever, like all of that stuff, like there's still a human side to you. And that's where organizations like an AWE come in. That's what I look to organizations for more than anything, is that personal side, that personal development. So I think that's a point that should also be focused on within associations and a reminder to associations. You're dealing with humans, and humans have a lot of issues that they may not share. So I know that was an issue that I suffered through my teenage years until I kind of found myself and became confident. So having organizations like this, especially as the next generation comes up, although they seem a lot more confident and they've got it together, there's still a lot of emotion and challenges that they need to work through as well.
So I'm glad that you mentioned kind of the next generation also, because one thing I've noticed is that the culture shift does seem to be happening. GE has their first female CEO. Pixar just started a new initiative called Spark Shorts, which is about giving diverse directors and the opportunity to share their stories. And the first one was just released. It's called Pearl, and it is about women in the workplace. It's about this pink ball of yarn that goes to work at BroCore, BRO Core, and
That's
how the culture changes, and it's really good. It's worth watching. But that's the first one that they put out. There's different things like the CEO, Mark Benioff of Salesforce, coming out and offering maternity leave and paternity leave to their employees, so that it's not just the women who have to take care of the children. There seems to be a cultural shift, and obviously it's not where it needs to be yet, but I think setting up these really good examples for the next generations to kind of absorb and realize that this is part of a cultural shift is important. So on that note, I kind of wanted to hear from each of you, if we had to change just one or two behaviors or attitudes, just to get going, just to push ourselves into this cultural shift, what should we be doing?
Very good question.
Besides watching Pixar shorts.
I know, right?
Well, I think what we're also seeing, Alex, and I don't know if this will directly answer your question, so my apologies ahead of time, but I think what we're also seeing is women creating their own opportunities as well. We're seeing a huge shift in, women business owners that are, instead of maybe trying to climb a ladder, they are building their own thing, right? So they're creating the table, they're setting the table, and they're putting the chairs around the table that they want to be around. And I think that's a really unique and cool thing that we've seen over the past few years, is like I always hashtag boss babes. And it's such a movement because it's so different. And that, to me, I'm just seeing more and more of that. So as the shift continues with women taking on senior leadership positions within organizations, I also think we're going to continue seeing women who may get frustrated at their job and they just can't, break that glass ceiling and start their own thing. I've heard it time and time again from women in my circle that I connect with. So I don't know that that's not necessarily a change, but I think it's something that you can expect a lot more of as we move forward, as the future, continues for women in business.
And is it worth, what can we do, especially in the events industry? We work with a lot of different vendors. We work with a lot of different partners. Is AWE a resource where we can go to find those women-led businesses that we want to be working with?
Definitely. We have tons of stuff inside the member portal. So we are right now what we're doing, one of the big things that we're doing is a speaker directory. We've partnered with another organization so that anybody that wants a speaker for their group can go into the speaker directory and they will see tons of incredible women speakers. I think panels are a big thing that we can start changing now. I could literally answer this question for the next 3 hours because I have so many thoughts, but panels and speakers are a very front-facing piece. And again, it's an unconscious bias. You don't always realize when you're constantly reinforced with white men, that there are other experts out there that could be telling you the exact same thing, or also offering viewpoints that are different but so valid at the same time, and making you look at things from a completely different side or perspective. So one of the things that we have created, like I said, is we're putting together a speaker directory. So if you're one of our all access members, you can put yourself into the speaker directory. So if you're interested in being chosen for events, I would like 2019 to be no more all male panels. You find it all the time. I would also really like 2019 to be no more all white panels. I think it's really important to get as many different viewpoints, because the studies have shown that, when you have viewpoints that are different, you may conflict more, but your final product is going to be a lot better. So I think that is a big one. AWE is able to do stuff like that. We are putting together a job board so you can put jobs out for AWE members, because when you're deciding to join AWE, you obviously have motivation, you have passion that would make you a wonderful hire. Yes, if you're looking for, a supplier or woman-owned business, we have Facebook groups that you can go into and you can request, talk to people about it. Hey, I'm looking for an AV provider. I'd like one that is woman-owned. I'd like to work with a management system that maybe, has at least 50% female on the staff. And then the other thing is also for people when they are going out to look for that, one, make sure that their candidates showcase a range. You can always ask a supplier, hey, how many women are in executive levels at your event? How many women would be on my team? or I'm really looking for diversity in my suppliers. Are you part of any of these additional groups? There's tons of amazing other organizations that you can be a part of to showcase that you have diversity status. And then when you're hiring, obviously the end goal is we want to make sure that, the candidates that you're getting are the best and that they showcase what the industry actually looks like. The industry is made up of tons of different people. They look different, they act different, they have different experiences, but you're gonna still get a vastly male and white audience if you're still just putting it out to the same places every time. Take a little bit of extra time, take a couple extra steps to make sure that your job posting is going out to other organizations. You can work with groups, like I said, like AWE, you can work with are tons of different organizations. I know that there's like the Hispanic meeting planners, the Black meeting planners. I don't know the acronyms off the top of my head, but reach out to them. See if there's a job board that you can post on there as well, because the more candidates that you can get in, the more likely you are to get the best candidate, and also make sure that your team is made up of a lot of different personalities and types of people.
I love the speaker thing because I think everyone here is a speaker or we have spoken. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because for me as a speaker, I've been starting to look for people to present with. And those people that I've reached out to Sarah and Courtney. We've, created this Facebook group that we kind of just started to kind of help each other create new content. And, I think it's important for me. I've also reached out to some other female speakers. I'm like, let's partner together and present something together, because I don't want to be another white male speaker alone on that stage. I think it's important that the people who are in the audience are seeing people like them. So I love that. I think
I do want to dig into a little something that we haven't talked about yet. And it's on this topic, and it goes back to your question, Alex, about what kind of attitude, do we want to see or do we think is important, with future generations coming up. And I just want to, I know we've only got a couple minutes here, but I do want to just voice the importance of asking questions and not making assumptions. So I think, and we probably don't have time to dig into this, which I'm okay with, because it's a little bit of it's a very complex conversation. But even looking at a topic like the wage gap, it's so easy to see a number and a statistic and assume that it is without a doubt tied to something like discrimination. So for example, people will fluctuate between like 17 and 20% for women who are, that's the amount that women are making less compared to men, and no further questions. And I think that's bad. That's not good. I think we owe our generation, the generations before us who have laid the foundation for these conversations to happen, and the generations that are coming up behind us, a real conversation around what does that data look like? Is discrimination the number one factor and variable contributing to the wage gap? Because in all reality, it's not. So instead of assuming, I think it's really, really critical that we have intelligent, informed conversations around why this number exists, how we can actually provide solutions to the different variables that contribute to something like the wage gap, and how can we educate those around us so that everybody is informed. I think that's something that is being missed right now, and it comes back to that. Let's not have polarized groups throwing out numbers. Let's have a group of people that has a conversation and make some kind of headway as a group, as a society.
So we're going to need a volume 2 and probably a volume 3 and 4, because Kiki said she could talk for 3 hours.
Right.
But unfortunately, like you said, we are up against the clock. So we're going to try and combine these last 2 questions into one as much as possible. And then we'll say thank you and our goodbyes. So I want to go around the circle here and say, okay, so if you could pick normally we kind of do one tip for planners on whatever the topic is. Since we've kind of talked a lot about expanding ourselves and our careers, what would be the one tip that you could give for people, as they look forward and try and grow their careers? And then do you have any resources you'd like to share, websites, blogs, gadgets, or those kinds of things? And Courtney, since you just finished up, let's start off with you.
I mean, I would say, especially, to our community and beyond, we are a relationships-based community. And my best piece of advice to anybody, no matter what level they're coming in at, where they're coming from, is to really, truly invest in nurturing relationships with people, all people across the board, whatever their life stories are, whatever level they're at, whether they're old, young, veterans, new grads. Invest in the relationships and the people around you. That's my best piece of advice for anybody.
Sarah?
Yeah, mine kind of is similar to Courtney's, but I was going to say you can build those relationships by actually volunteering. So volunteer for organizations like an AWE or MPI or PCMA or whatever organization you're maybe a member of that is intriguing to you. And that is a great way to cultivate relationships, all while building yourself personally and professionally.
And Kiki?
To be a little bit of a broken record on those two, my best advice has always been people love to talk about themselves. So feel free and don't be afraid to ask somebody out to coffee. The worst they can do is say no and ask them questions. But then also repay that favor and allow yourself to be as accessible to people that are interested in hearing your story and picking your brain as those people who have offered that to you. You'll be able to grow your career, you'll make connections, and you'll be able to offer your advice and your leadership down the line also.
Hear, hear. Well said, ladies.
And obviously we're going to include links to AWE and on the subject of asking you questions. I should have asked, is it pronounced awe before I just dove into it and decided calling that?
No, it's fine. Well, so technically it's pronounced AWE, but we do the play on awe. So we call things awesome and things like that. So it sort of works both ways.
See, I saw all that and I was like, oh, wait, nobody's actually called it AWE. Maybe.
That's okay.
Maybe we shouldn't have called it awe. So,
that's okay.
Well, thank you all so much for joining us today. Kiki, where can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
So I'm on Twitter it's at Janske, JNSSK. It was part of my maiden name. I'm not super active on there except for talking about pizza, but the best way to find information out is to go to womeninevents.org. You'll find me at the Elevate conference on March 7th, which is going to be in DC. It's AWE's inaugural event. Sarah and Courtney, I believe, will be there too. They've been a huge part of it.
Yes, we will.
But yeah, you can find me on Instagram under Kiki the Fox too. But again, that's mostly just pictures of cats.
And pizza, I hope.
And pizza, lots of pizza.
All right. Courtney, how about you? Where can people find out more about you?
Well, hopefully everywhere. But you can shoot me an email, Courtney@courtney-stanley.com. Or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active there too. If you type Courtney Stanley, I'm hoping I'd be one of the first ones that come up.
And Sarah?
Yeah, so I love social media, and those that know or are watching this know this about me for sure. So any social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, I'm on all of them. And you could just do a Google search, Sarah Soliman Dodden, and I should come up.
Nice. Well, thanks so much for joining us. Alex, a pleasure as always. Good to see you.
Yes, always. And stay tuned also, because Courtney and Sarah are working on something mysterious.
Oh, yeah.
We are. That's more to come. Get excited.
I'm personally very excited, so I hope you all are too as well. And I plan to be at the AWE event as well in DC. So
we're excited to see you.
Nice. And Alex, where can people find out more about what you're up to with Little Bird Told?
Oh, everywhere. At A Plaxon on Instagram, on Twitter, Alex Plaxon on LinkedIn. Just there's no other Alex Plaxon, so it's kind of fun.
All right. Well, thanks for being here as always. And I'm Brant Kruger. I'm also just kind of everywhere as Brant Kruger. So wherever you want to find me, I'm generally there. We want to remind you that Event Icons is recorded live each Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch live at event-icons.com. There you can see all the show notes and the links to the resources and all of the things that we talked about today. And that, of course, is where you can join the chat right there on the page. It's all embedded so you can actually watch the show and type in the chat all at the same time. Not a lot of questions today. Everybody was kind of there, but it looked like they were all intently listening. So there was a lot of hi, everybody listening, kind of stuff going on in the chat. But remember, you can always add your questions for our kind of iconic guests there in the chat. We want to know what you think. Reach out on Twitter, use the hashtag EventIcons, or join the EventIcons Facebook or LinkedIn groups, and let us know who you want to see on the show, what topics you want to discuss, whether or not we should have volumes 3, 4, 5, and 6 of this subject, and so forth. Let us know what icons you want to be on the show, and thank you so much all for joining us, and we'll see you next time on Event Icons.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #EventIcons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway.
And join the social conversation. Sponsored by Little Bird Told Media.
Just tag your post with #EventIcons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on #EventIcons.